It's been really fulfilling, and not just on the aspect of like helping patients, but also like just making this a known issue. Even if people know about it, then I don't know, it can help the patients too, right? Like kind of like they're not alone going through this.
Hello, I'm Eric Anderson. The voice you just heard belongs to registered nurse Dominique Paulgaard. Dominique, along with her colleague Lierin and Baerg, are the featured guests in Season 7, Episode 6 of YXC Underground. A cancer diagnosis at any age is scary and life-changing, but receiving this news when you are at a point in your life where having children, starting a family, or perhaps growing your family are on your mind, it raises a different set of challenges. Helping patients navigate fertility issues during a cancer diagnosis is something Dominique Paulgaard and Lierin and Baerg do in their roles as nurses at Royal University Hospital and with their charity, Prairie Cancer Fertility Preservation. You are about to meet two incredible women in this episode of YXC Underground. One of the many privileges of this podcast is learning about new things that most likely I would never have come across in my daily life. That is certainly the case with Prairie Cancer Fertility Preservation. The charity was started 3 years ago by a group of oncology nurses in Saskatoon and today features Jessica Smith, Taylor Huang, Lierin Baerg, and Dominique Paulgaard as its members. The purpose of Prairie Cancer Fertility Preservation is to preserve the ability for cancer patients to have children. As I learned from Lierin and Dominique, this can be either through sperm or egg preservation, and as you are about to hear, it can be quite the journey. Lieren has been a registered nurse at Royal University Hospital's Inpatient Cancer and Stem Cell Transplant Unit for the past 10 years. Dominique has been a nurse in the same unit for 13 years. They both have families with young children and find the time to run this charity. How the charity works, why it means so much to them, and what conversations are like with their patients when it comes to fertility are topics we cover in our conversation. We also discuss how overwhelming it is for someone who has just received a cancer diagnosis to think about if they want to preserve their ability to have children in the future, and the financial challenges that come with their decision. As I said earlier, I learned so much from Lierin and Dominique and sure appreciate their patience as I slowly discovered just how complex this issue is in our community. The three of us met on a sunny Saturday afternoon in Dominique's dining room. You'll hear her dog Cajun walk by the microphone a few times to say a quick hello. I started the conversation by asking Lierin where the idea for Prairie Cancer Fertility Preservation came from.
There was a patient on our unit that was quite young and needed to do sperm cryopreservation to be able to preserve their ability to have children after doing cancer treatment. And this patient wasn't able to afford it. At the time, it was about $450, and this patient was quite young, and so just didn't have the funds to be able to do it. And I thought that was really heartbreaking because they've just been delivered this life-changing news. You have a life-threatening illness, you have cancer. And on top of that, even if you survive this, you may not be able to ever have children. And so from my personal experience with infertility as well, my husband and I also struggled with infertility for several years before having our kids. We did 2 rounds of IVF, and we had a lot of years of heartbreak and, just struggling to build your family, right? It's a huge identity piece for some people that if they can't have children, that in itself is completely life-changing. So to be served these 2 significantly life-changing events, I thought was just that's completely unfair. And the fact that it's not covered, there's no provincial coverage for, and most benefits companies don't cover anything to do with fertility treatment at all. So for that patient, I don't know if they ever ended up getting any funding at all. But it's happened before where patients just don't get the money. So they aren't able to become parents in the future, potentially, not biological, if that's important for them. So, and it was just such a huge identity piece for me that I didn't think that was appropriate, that they shouldn't be able to have that compassionate funding.
Did it Lieren, did it hit you right away that this isn't right and that something needs to be done? Or like, did you go home that day and that, like, did it sort of fester in your mind a bit, or did you know right away like something needs to be done?
That's a good question. I think like it maybe hadn't come up a whole bunch at the time in my mind. Like, I don't know, maybe I just didn't look after these patients, but as soon as it kind of, I guess in that moment, like I remember actually where I was on the unit. I remember talking to certain people and I remember just thinking like, yeah, like this is not okay. And then I kind of, I don't know, I guess I probably thought about it for a little while and then reached out to our work Facebook page and said, yeah, I want to kind of start maybe doing something about this if anybody's interested and wants to help. And then that's when my colleagues all kind of communicated that they would be interested in helping, and away we went.
Dominique, why did you want to help?
Well, I'm lucky I have 3 beautiful kids, and being a parent has always been something that I've really wanted. And I'm kind of along the same lines where, like, you get a cancer diagnosis and it's so life-changing. And then a lot of people don't even think about the fact that you may not be able to have kids after this. It's not on your mind, and it's not something you think about. And then all of a sudden to be told, like, by the way, you need to do sperm banking or egg preservation right now, essentially, or you may not have that chance. It's just, I don't know, it's just kind of heartbreaking. And if we can do something to either completely cover those costs or help cover those costs, then why not, right? It doesn't take all that much time from us. It's all the little bits that count. And I have some time, some energy that I can give to it. So I just thought it was a really good way to get involved and help our patients out. We've been able to help 6 or 7 people so far. And, I've actually been able to personally be there when they've gotten that news, and also just be like, hey, by the way, we have a charity that will completely cover this for you. And just to see the relief on their faces of like, oh my gosh, I don't need to actually think about this. Like, whether or not you have the funds, it's not something that you should have to worry about paying for. So yeah, it's been really good. And the people that we've been able to help, they're grateful. And I'm just glad that we can ease that burden just a tiny little bit that comes with the cancer diagnosis.
I want to get to the gratitude part in a bit too, especially from the patients. Like, that's amazing that you've already been able to help 6 or 7 people. That's awesome. But when you have that like initial discussion with a patient, with a person, and it's like you said, it's a cancer diagnosis, and then on top of that, here's something else you have to think about. Like, what I cannot imagine what that conversation's like, but what is it like for you guys?
So the patient so this was before, I think before this whole group came to fruition. I looked after a patient, this was probably about 7-ish years ago, who was my age and had been given a fairly aggressive cancer diagnosis. And just talking with this patient about how heartbroken they were and how, they thought, I had so much time, like I'm spending this time with my husband and we're building our life. And it really resonated with me at the time. And at the time we were going through infertility as well. And so I think it just wasn't really maybe on my mind. It was just, you feel for those people. And where we work too, you get to know your patients really well, because they're there often for a good chunk of time. And so you get to know them and their families and what's going on in their lives. And just to see somebody else in that pain of, I have this life-threatening illness and now my identity completely is in question because I always knew I wanted to be a parent and I can't. It's so hard to see that. And that resonated with me, I think, because I also really badly wanted to be a parent, and it took several years to get to that point to have my children. And so you identify with that pain, I think, and with that grief. There's so much grief and fear and loss of control, and cancer really does strip everything away from you to a certain extent. And so just to be a part of that is heartbreaking. And I think just the whole profession of nursing is, we want to be able to help our patients and help them holistically, not just, treat their cancer, but look at their whole life. Like, that's the whole premise of nursing is holistic care. And so I think it's really hard to be a part of those conversations, but I think it's also, we owe it to our patients too, to troubleshoot and say, what can we do about this in the moment, Yeah. So
what are the conversations like for you, Dominique?
If you're asking kind of generally what that initial conversation is like, usually that's had between the physician and the patient. And so we often aren't a part of that conversation. However, since we've been around for a few years now, a lot of the physicians, a lot of the social workers are actually there as well when these conversations are happening, just to provide the support. And so now that they were there and most of them know that we exist, they're very quick to say, if this is something that you would like to do, please apply for funding. Generally, they can cover you, and just kind of goes from there. So, like I said, with the few patients that I have been able to talk with after, it's definitely eased that burden a lot. It's something that they can do without having to worry about. And then, when they get better, if they're looking at having a family, then they know that chance is still there. It hasn't been taken away from them like so many other things have been. So I guess it just kind of offers them a lot of hope, really, for something later on in the future. Yeah.
You both mentioned like the fear and loss of control. I'm just trying to picture myself like as a patient, you're thinking about your personal health and the treatments that you're about to start, and yet there's this whole other, like you said, there's this part that they probably hadn't thought of, but in terms of like whether it's sperm or eggs, like is it like are people able to process things in that moment, or does it take time for, I guess every person's different, but does it take time for people to sort of process?
I think it does. Initially, when you receive a cancer diagnosis, I mean, if it was anybody, let's say, kind of our age, younger, like early mid-20s, let's say, okay, so you've been given this diagnosis. It's a lot of information. It's a ton of information. And depending on the type of cancer, your treatment has to come either fairly urgently, or it can potentially be delayed. But depending on that too, you're looking at, you may or may not be able to work, probably most often not able to work. So you have a financial aspect to that. So you can't work. You've got risk for infection, so you can't go out, hang out with your friends. You can't go to family gatherings, depending on how sick you get. Just even the way you feel, you're looking at things like body image, body changes. There's a lot of loss of control that comes with that. And so it is quite overwhelming at the start. And I think that the fertility preservation piece does kind of fall, I suppose, maybe a little bit less in the priority list in terms of all the immediate things, but it is very overwhelming. It does take a little bit of processing, I think, for some patients to really truly appreciate what is happening. And the whole treatment course is it is a process of, starting treatment and going through the grief and the loss of control because of all those aspects, like I mentioned. If patients do have a child already, then, if they wanted to have more kids, they're having to deal with childcare and not being around their children. And so it's very multifaceted. It's very dependent on the person and their treatment options. But it does take a bit of processing, but I think it's just with all the information that kind of gets thrown at you at the start of when you get a cancer diagnosis, the fertility piece does kind of take a bit of a back seat, but it's not until maybe later, if that wasn't presented to you, then it's kind of like, oh no, like this, I wasn't focusing on that at the time because, I'm dealing with the immediacy of treatment and money and like, so there's a lot of things to consider. It's not just you go into the hospital and you get chemo, you go home. Like there's a lot of things. It affects every aspect of your life. So
there's so much, isn't there?
Yeah. There's a lot. People don't understand how much it actually encompasses.
From a medical perspective, what does and I guess every treatment is different, but if you're able to like maybe generalize it a bit, like what is happening to the body that makes it so that you might not be able to have kids down the road? Like what's happening there? That's a science. It's kind of a sciencey question.
That's my.
We'll explain it way better than I will.
Okay, so I guess just kind of looking at general cancer. So cancer is rapidly dividing cells out of control, and different types of cancer will grow and change at different rates depending on the type of cancer. And so your conventional chemotherapy will target those cells. They target rapidly dividing cells. Okay, but you have other types of rapidly dividing cells in your body. So things like your hair, your skin, the cells that line your GI system. And so that's why people's hair falls out when they get chemotherapy, because the drugs target those cells and kind of make them not work temporarily, right? That's why you get really nauseous or you get diarrhea or whatever. But the other rapidly dividing cells are cells in your reproductive organs. So things like your sperm, your eggs, like those cells go fairly rapidly as well. And so, but because they're so sensitive to, I guess, different types of influences and different types of chemicals, you can have permanent damage to the DNA in your reproductive organs. So then it would essentially render you infertile depending on the type of chemo you're getting, how frequently, how aggressive it is. So any type of rapidly dividing cell and your fertility cells are included in that.
Thank you for explaining that. She explained it very clearly, didn't she?
Way better than I would have.
But again, another very basic question, but like, do people know that? Like about the fertility? Like, are people aware of that?
No, I don't think that's a very well-known fact. I think when people associate chemotherapy with side effects, they just see sort of the hair falling out and the throwing up nonstop. Which fortunately we have drugs that we now give our patients to help prevent the nausea, vomiting. So that is definitely way better than it used to be. Hair loss is definitely still quite prevalent depending on, again, which type of chemotherapy or drug you're getting and the dosage, how often, how aggressive you're being treated. But yeah, fertility definitely takes a backseat. It's not something that most people know of. So,
So as in your guys' experience then, when does this, like, when do patients sort of like, do they bring it up with you, or at what point do you sort of come in and say, like, I was going to say, by the way, that's not the right way to put it, but maybe like inform them of this? Like, is it, because like you guys have established, there's so much to comprehend, to digest at the start. And then it's like, what point do you sort of come in and inform them of this?
Well, like Dominique mentioned, like a lot of these conversations about the initial kind of stuff comes with a physician and often a social worker, and that'll be done sometimes at the cancer center, sometimes in the hospital. It just depends where they're at when they're diagnosed. But I think the Cancer Center recently has had a bit of a push to include it's called oncofertility, to include oncofertility in their conversations. There is a lot more of a push in the last maybe couple of years to do that. Because we don't work there, I don't know how consistently that comes up. But it's more or less like our social workers, they will bring it up if we're not there. Dominique and I both work shift work, we work part-time. And so I think it just, if we just kind of keep it in the back of our minds that, you know, if we happen to see that there's a young patient on the unit, I don't know, I do this, I just go and I check in, I introduce myself, and I just ask if it's been brought up with them yet, if it's something they're interested in. And if they do, great. And if not, then I print off a brochure for them and go from there. But
yeah, I always keep a quick eye because often they'll have a requisition to go see, or a consult, to go to Aurora, which is the only fertility clinic in Saskatchewan. And so if I see that, then I will go, if we haven't heard anything from our social workers yet, because they're the ones who will send us the paperwork if they have spoken with the patient, then I will actually go and talk to them and just be like, hey, by the way, I see that you have this. We have a charity that could potentially cover it for you. So if this is something you are interested in, here's the paperwork. Just fill it out and email it to us, and we will let you know sort of whether or not we approve. So. Yeah.
You have mentioned that you've been able to help some people already with your charity. Like I know there's clearly like privacy reasons there, and I don't want to step on any toes there, but like what can you tell me about what those experiences have been like?
you had the most recent one.
Yeah. Actually, so we just had a young person be diagnosed, and they were actually not able to pay for it up front. And so generally what we've been able to do so far is just reimburse our applicants. This person couldn't, which I mean is totally fair. Not everyone has, that amount of money up front. And so we were just able to organize it with the social worker and with Aurora. So I was just able to go to the clinic, pay it for them, so they didn't even have to worry about that. So, I mean, for this young person, this is something that if we hadn't been there, they may or may not have been able to find the funds somewhere else. And so that chance would have been gone. So yeah, it's pretty cool too. Like we're hoping like 5-10 years down the road, we start hearing some stories of babies that have come from this. So, it's always an extra bit of hope. And for someone that they don't have to grieve that lost chance. There's a lot of stuff that they're going to grieve. Their identity is going to be changed because of everything they're going through. There's a lot of adaptations that they need to make with their life. They will probably lose some friends along the way, all of that kind of stuff. So, just for this person to not have to grieve the identity of, there's a good chance I won't be able to have children later on in life. It's just kind of one more thing we can take off their plate so that they can focus on healing and getting better. And mental well-being actually really affects your physical well-being as well, as much as we know. So, the more stress that we can take off a person, hopefully the better that they'll be able to do with their treatment and their transplants and all of that kind of stuff. So
you just said something that really just like clicked in my head in terms of grieving that lost chance. Mm-hmm. That's really powerful, you guys. That's what you're doing. Because they might not get that chance without you guys.
Yeah, it doesn't for sure mean that you won't be able to have kids, but there's a really high probability that you will be infertile.
And also too, even if you do the egg preservation or the sperm banking, it's a chance though too, right? Like even so for myself with the IVF history, even though I have not had a cancer diagnosis personally, I haven't had any impacts on my health in that way. I still only had they only quoted me about a 50-50 chance of actually getting a baby out of doing IVF. And so at the end of the day, it is a chance. We don't guarantee that you'll get children, but the chance is there, right? Like we're not completely stripping that away from you and saying, nope, no children from you kind of thing. The one patient that I was able to connect with in person to give them, they ended up having to pay for it initially and then got reimbursed because we were pretty new at the time, I think. And so we hadn't heard about this patient in time to pay for it by the time they had already gone for their preservation. Just the gratitude, they were very young, had gone through the preservation process, and just the gratitude to be able to have that financial coverage was profound. It was, it was a lot of hugs and a lot of tears and a lot of just, this was amazing. You guys have, made a huge impact in my life, financially for myself and my family. And it was really, it was very heartwarming. So.
And I hadn't thought of it too, in terms of it's not only just for that person, but it could be for their family as well. Oh, that gratitude must be so powerful to experience for you both.
It's quite something. And like Dominique said, I think if, say, in, 5-10 years, if, there are some, that's kind of the one thing that I say, if you end up having a baby, just, you don't have to give me details. Just let me know. Just let me know you had a baby, you have a family. And I think that and again, from my own personal struggles and the issues that kind of we had and the things that we lost along the way with infertility, I think if we can help somebody get to that point in life, that is just, all of that will have been worth it, So, because I helped somebody not have to feel like that too. So, it's very profound.
Thank you for sharing those stories. Yeah. I appreciate it. When you decide that, or you hear from a patient, yes, they need help and they want to access your charity. How does it work? How does the process work?
It's very simple. There's, I think, 2 forms that they need to fill out. One is just sort of about them, and we have a few criteria. One is age. It also has to be a cancer with a curable intent. They cannot have any third-party coverage. We're a fairly young foundation, so we don't have bottomless pockets. So fortunately we haven't had to pick and choose yet, but.
They have to be, curative intent, no third-party coverage, Saskatchewan health card. They've got to have, essentially just an oncologist and a social worker, which they would have regardless. And I think that's really...
Just the non-disclosure agreement. And then they just fill it out, email it to us. We don't have a web page yet. And then if they fit in the criteria, we're just yep, for sure. So...
And then, so once that's done, how... And I guess, again, this would depend on the person, but when can they... if it's a young man, when can they preserve their sperm, or when it's a young woman, how does that work? And does it depend on where their treatment is at?
Generally, they try to do it before the treatment starts, just because it can damage your reproductive organs. Fortunately for men, it's very easy. It's just a sample that can even just be given at the hospital and dropped off at Aurora. Generally it's like, oh, hey, you have cancer. By the way, would you like to donate sperm? And usually it's within a few days of the diagnosis that their Aurora will fit them in to get that sample to freeze for them. Women, it's kind of a whole other ball game. First of all, the cancer needs to be not advanced enough or slow growing enough that they can take 3 to 4 weeks in order to take some drugs and some hormones to stimulate the ovaries to produce the eggs, and then they need to go retrieve them at Aurora. So it's a little bit longer of a process, and it is significantly more expensive than it is for men. So it's definitely more of a barrier for women, because if you have a cancer that needs treatment right now, often that option is not even an option.
When you say significantly more, what are we talking about in terms of costs?
For men, it's $500, and for women, it's $8,000 to $10,000 or more, and that is with a subsidy. So it can be even more. It's not fair.
No. Thank you for saying that. It's not, is it?
No, it's like just for like a regular IVF cost without any subsidy is I think the procedure itself is $8,000, and then your medications, they vary depending on the woman. So some people need less, some people need more. Usually ranges from about $3,000 to $7,000. And so for me, for example, I was on the lighter end. I think the first time we did IVF was 3,000 some, and then the second time was about $4,000 with that $8,000 initial fee, and then plus the annual storage fee for your eggs or embryos, which is about $300 or $400 usually. Aurora is able to offer a subsidy. I won't necessarily say how much, because I'm sure that varies and fluctuates. At the time that I talked to them, it was about $5,000. Like they could trim that $8,000 to about $5,000. Whether or not they're able to do that now, I can't speak to that because I don't work there. But yeah, and then sometimes drug companies, I think, can give meds on a compassionate basis, but I don't know that that's a consistent thing either. So it really depends. There's a lot of variables, I think, that go into that. And I mean, a big thing too is like the egg retrieval procedure is it's decently invasive, and so you can't. They advise that you don't work for the week or two around that time, and it can be quite uncomfortable to go through that whole process, just with like the hormone stimulation and the retrieval process and the recovery from that. There is a small risk of some complications from egg retrieval as well. And so, yeah, it is a physically demanding process, worse for some than others, but it is quite a bit more involved for women, definitely. Yeah. So.
Oh. And then on top of that, you're thinking about what you're like with your cancer treatments then too. Like, it's just like this. I have to admit, like, and I was telling you this before, I knew very little, nothing about this world at all. And it is so clear to me just from chatting with you for like the last half hour, like you are filling a gap and you're fulfilling a need, which is incredible. Do you hope that there will be, will reach a time where like your charity isn't needed because
That's our ultimate goal, honestly, is that we have to dissolve as a charity because we're not needed anymore. So either through government funding that fully covers fertility care all across the board, not just for cancer patients. And I know in Alberta, we have a colleague who used to work with us, and she's out there, and she's still working cancer care. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to make oncofertility treatment sort of encompassed into cancer care. So because this is a part of the holistic treatment, right? It comes with the treatment that this is something that you should be doing for holistic treatment. So the goal is that ultimately this will be covered through your cancer care. So if that's there, we don't need to exist anymore.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Yeah, no, as of right now, there's no coverage. It's very rare that there's third-party benefits coverage. Like if you have benefits through your work or whatever, that it would cover. We were fortunate, like our benefits through the SHA, they don't cover like anything, which is disheartening. We were lucky my husband was able to advocate with his benefits to get a bit more coverage, so that was very helpful, but that's not the case for the majority of people. And there are several provinces that do cover IVF, like the first cycle of IVF in general, like Ontario does. I think BC just added coverage. I don't know what wait lists look like for that, but they have the population and the government that supports that type of treatment, right? And so I think if we could get if we could get full coverage either through government or through the cancer care model, would be a great start. But I do think, I mean, that's just my soapbox, is that I think fertility treatment needs to be covered for everybody. But yeah, that would be the end goal, definitely. If we didn't have to exist anymore, that would be amazing. Yeah.
I'm curious, what do your peers think of what you've done with your charity?
Well, I think they think it's a good thing. I hope so.
This is a lot of work you guys are doing.
Yeah, I don't think they realize how much work we've put into this. It was a lot more work than we were anticipating. None of us have ever, I don't think, worked with a charity, let alone like start one. So I think like a lot of us kind of bit off more than we could chew at the beginning. And it's been like a huge learning curve, a huge learning process, kind of with all the paperwork, rules and regulations and everything you can do in regards and everything you can't do. But yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of them who know it's there, we've also had a huge turnover on our unit. So we have a lot of brand new staff who don't even know we exist. So it's kind of always, you know, actually that's the second part of our charity, is not only just advocating for these patients and trying to fund, but also bringing along education with the issue. So letting people know exactly what we're doing now, that this is an issue, this is a big issue that we need to deal with, that we need to help people with, and, you know, advocate for it, and advocate for more funding for it, advocate for more coverage for it, and also teaching our peers on our ward that we exist, so that if they do hear of someone, either on our ward, in the cancer clinic, or even in the community, who could potentially need our resources, that they send them our way so that we can help them.
Yeah. Did you know it was going to be this much work?
Yes and no. I think I knew that it was going to be a lot of work, but I think I didn't know. You didn't know what to expect. Yeah, like none of us have ever really done this before. Yeah. I'm definitely non-business minded in the least, and so trying to figure out just all the aspects of that has been, like you said, a huge learning curve. And I mean, like, we all work. Three of us, 3 of the 5 of us at the start, have kids, and it's trying to balance that with work, because it's all on our own time, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like you don't know what you don't know, right? Yeah. So you kind of like, oh, okay, well, this was a ton of work, and oh my goodness, and like, who can we ask to help us? Yeah. And it's been a lot of trying to like just pick other people's brains and try to get some feedback and be like, I have no idea what I'm doing, help. Yeah. So, but it's been good though, because I think at the forefront though, it's, I don't know, for me anyway, it's been, I've been very determined to be like, you know what, it doesn't matter. And at the end of the day, like, if I hit a roadblock, if I hit kind of a brick wall, it's like, well, this isn't for me though. This is for my patients, and this is for somebody to be able to have a kid. And so that, I think, has kind of been a bit of an encouraging piece for me anyway, is like, yes, I'm busy, and yes, this is hard, and yes, I have no idea what I'm doing, but this is nothing compared to what somebody else is going through. And so it's like, yes, I can kind of grind this out and figure it out. I'm smart. I have support. I can troubleshoot this. And so, because at the end of the day, somebody's going to benefit from it. And it's not about my struggles. It's about trying to help somebody else. So. Do
you feel the same way?
Yeah. And it's honestly, like, as much as it's been like an, oh my goodness experience of like everything that we need to do for this to happen, it's been a really fun learning experience too. And we've met a lot of really cool and interesting people along the way. And like, even just with, Ross Nielsen. I haven't actually met him personally yet, but
he's a wonderful human being.
Oh yeah, I've been in touch with him a lot. I'm very excited to meet him and for this event. But meeting you and getting this podcast going and all of these kind of things, it's really cool, because it's kind of like, I feel like this is our year. We're like, the ball is rolling. We're getting bigger. We're getting out there, and we're making these connections that we've kind of been trying to make, but also like had no idea how to make them. So. Yeah, it's been really fulfilling, and not just on the aspect of like helping patients, but also like just making this a known issue. Even if people know about it, then I don't know. It can help the patients too, right? Like, kind of like they're not alone going through this.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because it is very isolating, and like you said, even with cancer patients too, they can be very isolated because they can't go out with their friends. They can't hang out with families in big gatherings because of the risks of their treatment and stuff. And so it is a very isolating thing. And infertility on its own is also a very isolating thing. Just from my experience, it's very, very isolating. And so it's, I think just the more people know about it and the more people kind of know what to say and how to support their people is like, that is profound too. Like, that is such an important piece of that holistic care, I suppose, is just, you're not just, going through treatment, you're going through treatment with a support circle around you in all aspects. Yeah.
When you both started your nursing careers, did you see it going down this path where it would be like you would be in, you know, like would it be fair to say, like, because I do see you as advocates for this issue, which I think is amazing. Did you see yourself when you were starting your nursing careers as doing something like that?
Not maybe as concrete as this, I suppose. Like part of the focus of nursing school, like I teach for the university too. I have a third year group that I just finished with. Part of their thing is advocacy, like part of their competencies that they have to kind of develop in school is that advocacy piece. As a student and as a new nurse, I don't know that you don't necessarily know how to go about doing that. You know, it's kind of more so like advocating for your patient in terms of where they're at. And I think that bigger picture piece doesn't necessarily come until you have a bit more experience, unless you're lucky enough, I suppose, to see a gap earlier on in your career. But I don't know. I've always kind of been a little bit more social justice minded, I suppose, just from my past pre-nursing life too. Did I think I'd be starting a charity? Absolutely not. I was kind of just in survival mode at the time, I think, as a new nurse. But I always kind of have been, like I said, social justice minded, kind of looking out for the people who are being underserved, just from my past work experience and stuff too. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Dominique?
I feel like a lot of nurses are kind of soft-hearted. We want to help people. So kind of looking back on how my life have gone, you know, I was that kid who watched the like World Vision commercials and I was just like, Mom, we need to help these kids. So I'm not surprised that I've ended up here. I've gone on a few mission trips and like that kind of stuff. Did I actually think that I was going to, you know, be able to do something like this? Not necessarily. Am I surprised that I'm doing this? Not at all. It's just kind of in my nature. And I, you know, it's kind of nice and fulfilling being on the forefront of it too, and not just being, you know, the odd helper who's helping out for these things, but running the show, essentially. There's a lot of background things that people don't realize happened. So like I said, I've learned a lot along the way, but it's also almost makes it that much more fulfilling and that much more, you're just that much more invested into it because you've put so much of yourself into this.
Yeah. Like you started this from scratch and look what you're helping people. Like that's really incredible. If people want to help out, and specifically, perhaps around March 15th, how can people, like, where can people find you? How can people help you guys out?
Okay, so we do have an Instagram page. It's Prairie Cancer Fertility. We also have a Facebook page, Prairie Cancer Fertility Preservation, and you can find our emails on those pages. We don't have a website yet. We're hoping to get one up and running. And March 15th, we are hosting a blues night at Crossmount, which we are very excited about because it's kind of our biggest event so far. And Ross Nielsen, who is an award-winning blues guitarist from Saskatoon, is going to be headlining it for us. He is doing 2 sets, so the doors will open at 7. He's going to start around 7:30. There's also a silent auction that will be happening. And included in the ticket price, which is $50, there's a charcuterie table as well. My husband and I actually got the idea because a few years ago we went to a jazz night at Crossmount, and so that's kind of what it was. You just kind of bought your ticket, you walked in, there was a live band, bottomless charcuterie table, and they have tables set up in groups of 10, and you just kind of go and you eat and you mingle and you listen to jazz music, and if you want, they have the bar so you can, you know, buy some local beverages there. And we just had such a great time, and I just kind of thought like, oh my gosh, this would be an amazing fundraiser for PCFP. Like, you know, a lot of times it's like a walk or this or that, and, you know, which are also fun, but sometimes it's nice to kind of do something a little bit out of the box. And I don't know, like, for us to have a night away from the kids is kind of like few and far between. So, you know, it's a great date night with no kids because it's 19 plus. And yeah, I mean, I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited to meet Ross and, you know, see what kind of music he has to do. And live music is always great. Yes. It's always great.
Live music is always great. And Ross is wonderful. You two are wonderful. This has been such a wonderful experience because I think I'm like a lot of people in the public. This wasn't on my radar at all. And so I'm very grateful to you both for sharing these stories and explaining it to me and to listeners in a way that's easy to understand, but also it's very clear the important role that you both are playing, not only as nurses, but with the charity as well. So thank you both so much. This was, I learned a lot from you, so I appreciate it. So thank you.
No, thank you. I appreciate you doing this podcast. This is amazing, actually. Yeah, just to be able to get the word out about this aspect, I suppose, of life that I don't think a lot of people really know about, not just cancer, but, like just how that looks for people who get a cancer diagnosis when they're really young. Unfortunately, it seems like it's really prevalent. And so it's an important thing. So I appreciate you doing this podcast.
Yeah, I really appreciate you reaching out to us and doing this. This is really exciting for us to, like Lieren said, get the word out and, share with people what we're doing and just spread the word.
My thanks to Lierin, Baerg, and Dominique Paulgaard for taking the time to share their passion and expertise with the podcast. As you heard in our conversation, Prairie Cancer Fertility Preservation has a fundraising event on Saturday, March 15th at Crossmount Cider Company. Tickets are $50 and Saskatoon's Ross Nielsen will be playing live sets of music. You can learn more by following Prairie Cancer Fertility Preservation on Facebook and Instagram, and I'll put a link to the charity event in the show notes. This has been Season 7, Episode 6 of YXC Underground. My name is Eric Anderson. I host, produce, and edit this local independent podcast. You can listen to YXC Underground wherever you find your favorite podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, or on the website, yxcunderground.com. Please feel free to leave a 5-star review if you like what you hear. These positive reviews help the podcast show up in more podcast feeds, so I really do appreciate the support. You can follow the podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Simply search YXC Underground. I want to thank my cousin, Andrew Dixon, for the original theme music for the podcast, and a big thank you to Saskatoon's Danger Dynamite for developing and maintaining the website. I also want to let you know of an exciting event I'm working on with the Reme Modern. Please mark April 17th on your calendar, as that's when YXC Underground will be presenting a movie at the Reme Modern's lovely theater beginning at 7 p.m. This is thanks to Kyle Servinsky, who runs the theater program at the Reme, and his generous spirit. We will be showing the short film Molly Shikotsky and I made last summer celebrating the podcast, followed by the Pixar classic WALL-E, because it's one of my favorite movies of all time, and I think it connects so nicely to YXC Underground in very meaningful ways. The Reme does this with other community organizations who select a movie for the public to watch for free, and it's really cool to partner with the gallery in this way. Plus, did I mention that it's free to attend? So, I would love to see you on the night of Thursday, April 17th to celebrate the podcast and watch one of the best films, I think, in the past 20 years. Plus, the next day, Friday the 18th, is a holiday, so, you can let loose a bit at the movie theater at the Reme, watching WALL-E and celebrating the podcast. So there you go. There's my sales pitch, and I'll be sure to remind you in the next podcast as well. Before I go, I would like to acknowledge that this interview was gathered on Treaty 6 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis. YXC Underground is a production of the Salthammer Production Company. My name is Eric Anderson. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you soon, Saskatoon.